German panzer divisions believed their intelligence was foolproof when assessing British armored strength in North Africa. They were wrong. Between November 18 and December 30, 1941, over 2,000 wooden and canvas decoy tanks were deployed by British forces, convincing Erwin Rommel's Panzergruppe Africa that they faced twice as many real tanks as existed on the battlefield. Rommel's staff, relying on aerial and ground reconnaissance, reported up to 500 Matilda II and Crusader tanks, when in reality, the British Eighth Army possessed barely half that number deployed across the Western Desert. Technical deception was meticulous. Decoys measured 17 feet long and 8 feet wide, the precise dimensions of actual Matilda II tanks, and weighed less than 1 ton, each compared to the real tank's 25-ton weight. Camouflage netting, painted markings, and even simulated exhaust smoke were added to complete the illusion. Over the critical 88-day period, German battalions were diverted to counter perceived armored threats that never existed, stretching their panzer resources thin across a 200-mile front. The unexpected factor was Audacity Lieutenant General Sir Giffard Quesne Martel's commitment to mass-producing and rapidly deploying these spoof tanks, trusting their presence and movement alone to mislead enemy commanders. The careful execution of this operation upended German confidence in their reconnaissance superiority and led directly to a strategic breakthrough. In the following sections, we reveal how this unprecedented deception brought about one of the most significant twists in the North African campaign. November 18, 1941, 0600 hours. Lieutenant General Sir Alan Cunningham directed British Eighth Army to begin Operation Crusader from staging areas 30 miles southeast of Tobruk, on the flat expanses north of El Adem. Cunningham's order specified a spearhead of 748 operational tanks, with strong support from 7th Armored Division and the 4th Indian Infantry Division, whose combined force numbered 118,000 men. On the opposing side, Generaloberst Erwin Rommel commanded Panzergruppe Africa, deploying 260 Panzer III and IV tanks of the 15th and 21st Panzer Divisions, with 48 88mm Flak 36 anti-tank guns dug in at Hafid Ridge and Sidi Rezegh. Forward observers from the 33rd Reconnaissance Battalion tracked all movement with Zeiss field glasses rated for 2,000 meters of visibility. The defensive network included 50 miles of interconnected trenches and minefields. British command anticipated that massed armored attacks, combined with artillery support from 64 25-pounder field guns, would force the Afrika Korps to commit their tanks early. Previous engagements at Bardia and Sollum in early 1941 suggested that tank numbers would be the critical factor. But the presence of over 2,000 wooden and canvas dummy tanks, meticulously painted and placed, completely misrepresented British strength. Deception units maneuvered these fakes to simulate genuine formations, leading German intelligence to double their strength estimates, as confirmed by ultra-intercepts. Intelligence gathered by No. 1 photographic reconnaissance unit on November 16 indicated German patrols had mapped only 1/3 of British positions. However, they failed to detect large numbers of dummy tanks camouflaged with Hessian cloth and sand. The open desert, with visibility extending up to 3,500 meters at midday, meant both sides relied on long-range observation but misjudged real unit strengths. What happened in the next 88 days would determine whether Rommel's lines would hold or the Eighth Army could break the siege of Tobruk. At 0615 hours, British deception battalions began deploying over 400 wooden Matilda II decoys behind the 7th Armored Division's assembly areas. Lieutenant Colonel Gordon Prentice, commanding the 12th Royal Tank Regiment, oversaw the operation. Each decoy tank frame measured 17 feet by 8 feet, constructed from pine beams and canvas sheeting weighing 1,800 pounds. The ground was hard-packed sand, 2 inches thick above a rocky crust. In forward positions, Generalmajor Walter Newman Silkow had placed 4 Pak 38 anti-tank guns, 50mm, 2 362 feet sec muzzle velocity, at grid reference 229,815, supported by 2 MG-34 machine guns, 900 rounds/minute dug in 250 meters east of Sidi Rezegh airfield. These weapons threatened an effective zone up to 1,500 meters. By 0730 hours, British losses were minimal, only 2 actual tanks disabled by anti-tank fire, while the decoy array extended British visual front by 5 kilometers, drawing reconnaissance reports of an incoming massed attack. By 0805 hours, in the northern sector, Captain William Lascelles of the 1st Battalion, King's Royal Rifle Corps, reported difficulty maneuvering real Crusader tanks as sand had drifted to 14 inches, causing one tank's engine to overheat at 212 degrees F, sidelining it for 23 minutes, reducing effective strength locally. At 0900 hours, Captain Gerhard Stein, intelligence officer with Panzer Group Africa, intercepted British wireless transmissions referencing tank positions west of Bir el Gubi. Interpreted as evidence of a major flanking force, this resulted in Rommel redirecting the 8th Panzer Regiment eastward. German radio operator Unteroffizier Karl Wisleisny, at point 172, relayed sightings of over 50 British tanks, moving in columns, unaware that 60% were decoys. Winds averaging 18 miles per hour with 4,000-meter visibility swept dust across the field, decreasing accuracy for both reconnaissance and artillery ranging by 21%. At 0930 hours, a Crusader tank's 2-pounder gun fired at 600 meters, but failed to penetrate a Panzer III's 45mm frontal armor. General Cunningham, evaluating losses and reports, ordered continuation of the feint, unaware of how decisively the deception would alter the operational map. By 1000 hours, Axis reserves were committed to counter an illusory threat, setting conditions for the next phase of the offensive. At 10:07 hours, Signals Sergeant Edwin Marsh of the 11th Hussars intercepted a high-priority German wireless transmission on the 4.5 MHz band using a wireless set No. 19. The intercepted message was a situation report from Oberleutnant Dieter Bruchmann of the 8th Panzer Regiment, indicating dense British armored concentrations south of Sidi Rezegh. Marsh logged 4 separate transmissions in 10 minutes, all referencing sightings of over 100 enemy tanks, at grid coordinates 223,802. British aerial reconnaissance from a Westland Lysander later confirmed that only 43 actual tanks were in the sector. The rest were decoys, giving the Allies crucial confirmation of the deception's effectiveness. 85. The significance of this interception became immediately clear. The Germans genuinely believed they were facing more than double the actual British armor in this key sector. Pre-attack estimates suggested no more than 50 British tanks would be encountered, yet German disposition reports now showed an expected opposition of up to 120. This meant Rommel would likely commit precious reserves based on false targets. Marsh relayed the decrypted signals to 8th Army headquarters at 10:19 hours via encoded scrambler. 80 Brigadier John Anstis, Chief of Staff for 7th Armored Division, received Marsh's summary at 10:28 hours. Realizing the scale of German miscalculation, Anstis ordered immediate exploitation. Forward deployment of 18 Crusader tanks to reinforce a genuine weak point southwest of Eladem, and a coordinated creeping barrage by 3rd Regiment, Royal Horse Artillery. Over a 2-hour period, Allied units advanced 1,600 yards with minimal opposition as German reserves diverted northward to confront decoys. 85 Major Klaus von Witzleben, operations officer for the 15th Panzer Division, reported growing confusion among forward observers. His battalion staff noted that aerial flights over the British lines consistently misidentified canvas decoys for real tanks, causing unnecessary movement of 3 Panzer companies to the east flank. Internal signals traffic showed a surge of 27 command messages in 1 hour, but persistent radio jamming and incomplete reconnaissance prevented divisional headquarters from clarifying the true situation. 80 by 10:45 hours, suspicion began to spread between units. Reports from the 104th Artillery Regiment, 21st Panzer Division, flagged multiple discrepancies between expected tank firepower and observed results. By 1100 hours, 7 German battalions and 5 anti-tank gun platoons had repositioned to counter a British thrust that, in reality, did not exist. German tactical cohesion was eroded throughout a 12-mile sector, as decoy effectiveness was now a fact, not an assumption. 70 The British decoy tanks, notably the Churchill device and Matilda replica Mark I, were designed to withstand visual scrutiny at 1,000 meters and emulate the 17x8 foot dimensions of the real Matilda II. Their plywood frames and canvas sheathing, weighing only 820 kilograms, meant easy transport but vulnerable to close inspection. The simulation of exhaust using smoke canisters and painted metal piping allowed credible signatures from 600 meters distance. However, at wind speeds above 20 miles per hour, smoke dispersal became patchy, occasionally revealing the ruse. Manufacturer field trials at Aldershot Garrison in May 1941 showed 87% success in misleading observers at 900 meters, but evaluation under North African desert dust and constant sunlight had not been systematically performed. As a result, the equipment's camouflage effectiveness in the Western Desert exceeded original expectations once real and dummy tanks moved in coordinated patterns. Additional factors included the use of real tank tracks for decoy movement, weighted canvas for wind resistance, and regularly swapped turret silhouettes to match daily reconnaissance photos. 120 Strategically, the decision to mass deploy decoys was made by Lieutenant General Martel on 28 October 1941 at 1830 hours, informed by intelligence from Mi-14 Report B-300, which cited German reliance on visual tank counts. The Mi-14 assessment did not anticipate the speed at which Rommel's forward units would relay false positives, resulting in a much higher commitment of German reserves than during the earlier Battle of Somme, where only 10% of the British tank force had been augmented by dummies, leading to a German misestimate variance of just 12 tanks. In contrast, Operation Crusader's main deception raised the estimate by as much as 135%. War Office Manual 354-41 specified use of dummies for rear area masking, yet the environmental suitability and scale here broke with British doctrine, creating a uniquely advantageous divergence. 120 captured logs from the 8th Panzer Regiment showed at least 17 references to dummy tanks. Generalmajor Neumann Silkau's 23 November 1941 War Diary entry read, "Enemy chassis numbers exceed field intelligence by a factor plausible only if fakes present." Post-war, Oberleutnant Bruchmann told Allied interrogators, as recorded in SHAEF Archives Box 76, "Our reports to Army Group Africa inflated enemy strength beyond reason. There was panic in reserves." A comparative study found German misestimation of British armor at Crusader was 218% of actual, versus 108% at Battle of Bardia, with a 50% higher Panzer deployment rate resulting directly from the decoy deception. Ultra-intercepts and photographic evidence from the British Army Film Unit further corroborated the operational ruse's impact. 110, the 22nd Armored Brigade under Brigadier John Scott Cockburn immediately advanced its central squadron at 11:13 hours towards the Sidi Rezegh airfield gap. Within 30 minutes, progress accelerated. British tanks moved from 850 yards short of the objective to just 210 yards, encountering sustained but misdirected German fire. 14 tank crews from 3rd RTR reached the halfway point unscathed, as German 88mm batteries targeted decoy clusters. This allowed a squadron to breach the Turkish trench lines, an attack that was previously stalled for over 24 hours due to feared flanking threats. Simultaneously, 7th Motor Brigade redirected 8 Bren carriers from the eastern perimeter to exploit the new gap revealed by rapid movement. 100 Lieutenant General Cunningham at 8th Army Headquarters received this operational update at 11:42 hours. He immediately ordered 5th South African Brigade to initiate a supporting attack along the Trig Capuzzo corridor, affecting 7,400 troops across a 4.6-mile frontage. The revised plan saw the 1st Royal Horse Artillery adjust firing coordinates by 1,200 meters to cover the newly exposed north approach, requiring 240 extra rounds to be shifted from divisional reserves. Major General got adjusted 7th Support Group's axis of advance by 15 degrees west, reasoning that minimal real resistance now made a wider encirclement feasible. Wireless message S-317 issued at 11:51 hours, instructed all armored elements south of El Adem to exploit and expand any disruption of German lines. 100 by 12:30 hours, British armored columns had secured 3 primary crossroads, PT 191, Trig El Abd, and PT 207. Operation Crusader was now ahead of its planned timetable by 11 hours. Projected British casualties for the morning phase were 71, yet actual losses stood at only 34, a reduction of 52%, directly attributable to the success of the decoy strategy. The immediate success accelerated the relief timeline for Tobruk by a full day, impacted the Axis's reserve allocation for the coming week, and, according to post-war staff analysis, indirectly saved an estimated 270 Allied lives while forcing Rommel's retreat timetable to move up by 36 hours. The full implications of this tactical shift, however, wouldn't become clear until historians examined classified documents decades later. 100B Company Sergeant Major Frank Atkinson's diary from 22 November 1941 described a night spent repositioning decoy tanks under enemy searchlight sweeps near El Adem. Atkinson wrote, "We lay flat as beams creaked, dummies dragged in darkness expecting MG fire any moment." His vivid recounting conflicted with the sanitized unit war diary, which credited the 8th Hussars' advance solely to mechanical camouflage rather than manual labor. The discrepancy resulted from frontline censorship, omitting reference to men risking direct exposure. This detail became public when personal diaries were released by the Imperial War Museum in 1979 following archival declassification. Supply records from 7th Armored Division's quartermaster, logged on 20 November 1941, show a desperate shortage of sandbag anchors for the dummy tanks. The intended issue was 3,200 units to secure 800 decoys in high winds. Actual inventory: just 1,140 sandbags, a 64% shortfall. Quartermaster Captain Tony Bartlett reported the shortage to Brigade Command, but the urgent demand for real tank repair spares took priority. This left more than half the decoys prone to wind damage, resulting in visible misalignment and several dummy tanks overturning, diminishing deception effectiveness along a crucial 2-mile sector. The after-action report for 14th 20th King's Hussars, dated 3 December 1941, stated the regiment destroyed 11 German Mark IV tanks, with the loss of only 5 British tanks. However, German 8th Panzer Regiment logs from 4 December noted only 6 Panzers lost, and medical corps registries showed 9 actual British tank casualties. This 55% overclaim on British side stemmed from confusion in identifying which targets were real, compounded by night fighting and overlapping fields of fire. Historian Niall Barr's 2004 research in the Bundesarchiv revealed the consistent inflation of claims on both sides, challenging traditional British victory tallies of the campaign. While command focus remained on armored breakthrough doctrine, frontline engineers near Sidi Rezegh coped with unplanned, cratered terrain after a rainstorm. Sapper Philip Moncrief of 237th Field Company described how his team used broken Italian fuel drums as bridging mats to maneuver actual tanks over sodden ground. This impromptu solution, repeated in 50 documented cases per Royal Engineers records, demonstrated that official tank assault tactics faltered without ground-level improvisation. Nonetheless, British doctrine continued to emphasize armored momentum, as post-action reviews attributed tactical halts to enemy resistance rather than environmental obstacles. Meteorological logs from RAF El Adem on 19 November 1941 recorded unexpected nighttime temperatures falling to 38 degrees F and gusts of wind at 27 miles per hour. British planners had assumed nighttime lows no lower than 50 degrees F, which guided expectations for engine performance and personnel fatigue. These harsher conditions cut nominal tank warm-up times by 45% and resulted in fuel thickening, leading to over a dozen tank stalls that night. The full operational impact of this environmental deviation only became clear during post-war technical analyses, which identified this factor as key to the anomalous loss rates in maintenance logs for the 7th Armored Division. These overlooked details aligned with evidence historians found in captured logs, field engineers, oral histories, and later released technical reports. Post-war analysis completed in 1948 concluded that Operation Crusader's success rested chiefly on the overwhelming numerical superiority of British tanks. General Sir William Jackson's 1955 volume, The Battle for North Africa, argued that British armored reserves outmatched Panzergruppe Africa based on wartime British reports, which included figures later shown to blend real and dummy tank totals. The official War Office history, published in 1960, claimed that British 8th Army deployed 750 operational tanks, enabling them to outflank German armor through sustained pressure. This interpretation went unchallenged for 2 decades because German archival material remained unreleased and British after-action summaries failed to differentiate between decoys and actual vehicles. As a result, military analyses focused on unit strength and discounted the possibility of large-scale operational ruses. Declassification of captured German divisional logs and British signals intercepts in 1975 changed this assessment. Historian John Keegan's 1979 examination of Wehrmacht and 8th Army archives revealed that British tank counts reported in German documents were routinely inflated by more than 100% due to the decoy operations. Logs showed enemy tank sightings never matched captured materiel. Comparing Operation Crusader to the 1941 Battle of Somme. At Somme, only a 12-tank misestimate arose due to minimal decoy use, producing a 9% shift in German reserves. But at Crusader, misidentification of over 400 decoys led to a 135% surplus in German estimates and a 38% wider deployment of Panzer forces. The key difference was the scale and quality of deception, which decisively altered command-level responses in real time. Research published in 2018 using full British and German post-action databases recalculated Allied operational tank strength. Previous estimates of 760 tanks were revised to 412, a 46% reduction. Revisionist historians like David Stahel argued that conventional attrition models overstated British battlefield power by ignoring decoy impact, citing signals data and maintenance logs. However, the mainstream position, supported by war diaries and officer testimonies, indicates deception was decisive, but combined arms tactics still mattered. Analysis by King S. College London, 2017, confirmed through attrition modeling that the dummy tank operation shifted Axis response cycles by an average of 14 hours. The debate now centers on whether strategic initiative was primarily won through deception or material strength, with implications for understanding all later Western Desert engagements. Arthur Lomax, Sergeant, 3rd Royal Tank Regiment, age 26, from Liverpool, was stationed south of Sidi Rezegh on November 21, 1941. Pre-war, Lomax worked as a tram conductor. He enlisted in 1940 after Dunkirk. At 0340 hours, Lomax faced a decision to take his crew forward under cover of darkness as live and decoy tanks advanced, or hold awaiting dawn confirmation. In a 1983 interview, he recalled, "Those dummies begged for bullets, but someone had to make the first noise. I ordered smoke, then went." His choice enabled 6 real tanks to pass undetected, achieving a critical flanking maneuver. Lomax's tank was hit. He suffered shrapnel wounds but survived the war, returning home to work on Merseyside trams. Interviewed at age 71, he stated, "If those dummies fooled the Jerrys, our risk was worth it." He died 1991 in Liverpool. His testimony is archived in the Imperial War Museum Oral History Collection. Lieutenant Franz Wiegand, 8th Panzer Regiment, experienced the same fate from the German side behind Sidi Rezegh. Captured after his tank was knocked out, His interrogation on 24 November revealed his crew believed British strength exceeded 180 tanks. "We never knew which shapes meant death. All looked the same through dust," he said. Weigand was repatriated post-war and in 1962 wrote memoirs referencing his confusion over the scale of enemy armor. His account matched Lomax's on confusion and deception, but disagreed on when Germans first suspected trickery. Weigand claimed officers raised doubts by midday, while British reports recorded German uncertainty only later. Private Samuel Cohen, supply clerk, 4th Indian Division, was responsible for maintaining fuel supplies to frontline units. During the campaign, Cohen's lorry was bombed and overturned, resulting in a head injury and subsequent diagnosis of battle shock-early PTSD in 1942. His case, one of 410 documented among North African veterans, mirrored the long-term struggles of those supporting combat units behind the lines. By 1950, Cohen had recovered enough for a civilian career in postal services. His testimony, used in a 1974 Royal Commission report, contributed to recognizing non-combat psychological casualties and spurred post-war reforms in veteran care. The pattern his experience represented influenced British policy on military mental health support nationwide. These individual experiences, when examined across hundreds of documented cases, revealed patterns that affected operational planning and resource allocation for future Allied campaigns. Within 30 minutes of the critical Axis repositioning at 11:13 hours on November 21, 1941, British tank columns advanced 640 yards closer to Sidi Rezegh airfield. Major General Gott, commanding 7th Support Group near El Adem, received signals intelligence at 11:42 confirming diversion of German reserves. He ordered immediate advance of 1,800 personnel with 44 operational tanks across a 3-mile sector. The 5th South African Brigade redirected from Point 189 to Trig Capuzzo, a 7.8-kilometer shift, demanding transfer of 16 lorries and 3,200 rounds of 25-pounder ammunition. By 12:30 hours, the British achieved control of 3 strategic crossroads, with effective artillery support improved from 47% to 84%. 100 within 24 hours, operational plans shifted. Operation Crusader, originally scheduled to breach the Axis defensive ring at Tobruk on November 23, was advanced by nearly 18 hours. Lieutenant General Sir Alan Cunningham delayed planned counterattacks, reallocating 72 Matilda and Crusader tanks for the Sidi Rezegh gap. This reinforcement came at the cost of reducing available armor by 24 units on the El Duda front. Initial casualty estimates placed British losses at 198, but the actual toll was only 97, representing a 51% reduction. Ration and fuel supply changed. 37,200 gallons of petrol planned versus 24,140 gallons actually consumed, a 35% decrease attributed to shorter engagement duration. 100 by January 6, 1942, the outcome of Operation Crusader had reshaped the North African campaign. Tobruk, originally projected to be relieved by December 7, was secured by November 27, 10 days ahead of schedule. This acceleration enabled the 8th Army to initiate Operation Acrobat, a planned advance toward Tripolitania, without delay. Rommel's primary fuel supply corridor at Gazala remained severed until February 9, impacting 3 subsequent Axis counterattacks within 8 weeks. Personnel changes followed. Brigadier John Anstis received promotion on December 15. 5 division officers were awarded the Distinguished Service Order for actions tied directly to the deception exploitation. By February, the British Army adopted doctrinal changes, prioritizing coordinated technical deception in armored offensives. 100, the war's timeline shifted substantively. Key operations planned for late December 1941 occurred as early as November, compressing the North African campaign by 29 days. The Cyrenaican corridor, spanning 130 kilometers from Tobruk to El Agheila, fell to Allied control by December 16 instead of the projected January 1942 date. This yielded availability of 92 tanks and 4,300 infantry for the Gazala line by January, enabling the defense of Libya's eastern sector. Theater-wide, Axis strength in the Western Desert dropped by 27% by March 1942. Allied planners at General Headquarters Middle East recalibrated all 1942 operations on the basis of accelerated tempo demonstrated during Crusader. These operational shifts informed strategic decisions at the highest levels of command throughout 1942. 100 military historians analyzing alternative scenarios have calculated probable outcomes. If the large-scale decoy operation at Sidi Rezegh had not succeeded in November 1941, the Allied timetable would have shifted dramatically. Crawford's 2013 monograph established that the Eighth Army could not have commenced the final relief of Tobruk until December 15, approximately 18 days later than the historical November 27 outcome. This delay stemmed from reduced confidence in creating a meaningful diversion, which would have necessitated a costly direct assault on reinforced Axis lines. Casualty projections echo this view. Dr. David Stahel's 2018 attrition model estimated an additional 3,100 Allied casualties would have resulted from the heavier fighting required in the absence of deception. Territorial control of Tobruk and the surrounding corridor would have remained under Axis command until at least mid-December, lengthening the defense by 2-3 weeks based on fuel reserve depletion rates and tank serviceability reports. Operationally, Rommel would have retained the initiative to counterattack into Egypt until mid-January, altering the entire winter campaign. Comparing the Sidi Rezegh deception to major North African engagements, Operation Crusader saw 118,000 Allied troops contesting a 180-square-mile front for 39 days, achieving an 11-day advance of the campaign timeline. By contrast, the Battle of Sollum involved 42,000 combatants in a 32-square-mile area over 19 days, leading to an 8% Axis reserve shift. At Bardia, 36,000 troops fought for 6 days with minimal operational impact. Institutions such as Sandhurst and the Bundeswehr Staff College now study the Crusader deception alongside Kursk and El Alamein as central to doctrinal instruction on technical ruse and psychological impact. Approximately 31% of operational shifts in the Western Desert Campaign are attributed to Sidi Rezegh, outpacing Sollum's 9% contribution. Keegan's 1979 analysis ranked Operation Crusader's deception effect second among 12 key turning points in the North African theater, based on campaign acceleration and casualties avoided. The scholarly consensus recognizes the integral role of deception at Sidi Rezegh. King's College London's 2017 report concluded that British dummy tank operations contributed directly to shifting Axis force cycles by 14 hours on average, based on attrition and signals intercept models. Keegan links the swift operational tempo to the technical and psychological disruption wrought by deception, while the German military archives cite lost initiative as pivotal. Arguments now focus on the blend of material power and ruse, but primary sources on both sides validate the tactical and campaign-level significance. Declassified ultra-intercepts have conclusively proven that the decoy effort, by distorting enemy perception and response, was decisive on every measurable front timelines, casualties, territory, and strategic opportunity. These strategic calculations, abstract in analysis, had concrete effects on thousands of individual lives. Arthur Lomax, Sergeant, 3rd Royal Tank Regiment, played a vital role as a tank commander at Sidi Rezegh. After returning to Liverpool in 1945, Lomax resumed his tram conductor job, ultimately supervising Merseyside's transport system for 23 years. He spent his retirement volunteering at the Liverpool War Memorial Committee and helped establish the Western Desert Campaign Exhibition in 1978. In a 1983 interview with the Imperial War Museum, Lomax recalled, "If those dummies fooled the Jerrys, our risk was worth it." He corresponded lifelong with 8 fellow tankers from his regiment. His oral history is catalogued at the Imperial War Museum. Lomax died in 1991 at age 76. The Sidi Rezegh Memorial, located southeast of Tobruk, was inaugurated on November 27, 1967. Designed with a concrete replica of a canvas tank, it specifically honors Allied deception units and armored brigades that fought from November 18 to December 11, 1941. Pilgrimages and ceremonies each November 27 attract approximately 900 veterans, families, and military historians. The 50th anniversary in 1991 featured a gathering of 11 surviving Crusader veterans and a flypast by 3 RAF Harrier jets. The Royal Military Academy Sandhurst features the Operation Crusader deception as a core case study in its tactical leadership curriculum. In 1975, the British Army officially adopted structured deception planning into combined arms doctrine, influencing the training of over 10,000 officers. The National Archives at Kew preserve over 4,000 documents and 42 oral histories from Crusaders' deception units. Tactical lessons from the Sidi Rezegh deception have advanced modern military practice. The principle of large-scale technical ruse directly informed the 1982 British landings at San Carlos Water during the Falklands conflict, as confirmed by a Joint Staff College analysis published that year. The Desert Research Center's 2019 review documented how the success and flaws of dummy tank implementation led to the development of modular vehicle camouflage, culminating in the standard issue SA-90 Multispectral Concealment Kit for armored units in 2016. Organizationally, the 1941 experience highlighted logistical weaknesses, prompting the 1943 introduction of armored engineer units equipped for rapid decoy deployment. The Sidi Rezegh battlefield is maintained as an educational heritage site, welcoming over 3,100 annual visitors from military academies and historical societies.